This is a photo of me at age 10 playing Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. So I've been playing games for quite a while. It's a soundtrack of one song, except I'm doing video games. So it's not exactly a fandom. I'm not a fan of video games. I actually had to learn a lot about video games in the process of making this. And also video games, like I would love to play video games, but I don't want to go around shooting people and ripping off their heads, and it's just gross. So hence this is my response to that.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Anita Sarkeesian has posted herself on Instagram saying that she's looking to be hired because she's back to try to get gaming to a more inclusive and wider audience space. Now, we're going to go over what she has on her website as of now, but first, let's look at some of Anita's greatest hits. We've got her birthday that she held in Stockholm that was wedding themed. And she says, it was a goofy and silly and fun. We had a bachelor party, rehearsal dinner, ceremony, and reception all in one. Now, this is a woman who, to my knowledge, is unmarried. And, you know, that's fine. If she doesn't want to get married, I'm not going to try to convince her. Another great one we have here is whenever she was extremely outspoken about how the female armor in the Mandalorian had boobage on it. She was very upset about that, very upset that there were no female speaking characters in the first episode of The Mandalorian, and it got a lot of people upset. But now, you have to know, Anita is one of those that has been fighting to get a lot of the stuff that we don't like into video games and shows for many, many years now. Back in 2015, Anita Sarkeesian, Zoe Quinn, and more take aim at cyber harassment against women. So this was when they went to the UN and they spoke about the harassment campaign, quote unquote, that was Gamergate and how they felt unsafe. But Sarkeesian and Quinn spoke on wanting censorship on the internet. They wanted people's voices to be shut down. Now, I will say that I condemn anyone who is actually sending threats to people. I don't like that kind of thing. I don't think it's necessary. But we never really got a whole lot of proof that they were actually getting a lot of threats. There was, on the inverse side, some threats that were coming from the progressives that we were trying to push out of our hobbies and our media, but they didn't ever really show any evidence that there was anything going on with them. Now, Anita Sarkeesian is kind of famous for her Feminist Frequency website that she had, and this is a section of the website that's tropes versus women in video games. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at some of these as we go, but right here, it was funded by a successful Kickstarter campaign supported by 6,968 backers, which, as we know, is most of the gaming population. Oh no, it's not. The Tropes vs. Women in Video Games series aims to examine limiting sexist patterns associated with female representations in games, and to illuminate how these patterns reinforce and perpetuate harmful attitudes about women in our culture. She has things, and I've got a couple of these pulled up, so we will look at a couple of them. But the damsel in distress trope, we've got women as background decoration, women as a reward special DLC, strategic butt coverings, body language, and the male gaze. Now, like I said, I've got a couple of these pulled up, so let's go ahead and look at what some of the abouts are, and this is again from her own website. The Damsel in Distress Part 1. From March 7th, 2013. Now again, this is the DEI queen who forced a lot of this stuff into our hobby and made it to what it is today, where a lot of it's just insufferable for a lot of us. Explores how the damsel in distress became one of the most widely used gendered cliche in the history of gaming, and why the trope has been core to the popularization and development of the medium itself. And I have the feeling she doesn't really talk too much about how that's a trope that's existed throughout all of history. Every time we tell stories of these characters, there's almost always a woman that needs saving. That's the driving motivation for the character to get through the challenges that are placed before him. As a trope, the damsel in distress is a plot device in which a female character is placed in a perilous situation from which she cannot escape on her own and must then be rescued by a male character, usually providing a core incentive or motivation for the protagonist's quest. Yes, that's where you get good storytelling. Here's a fun one. Miss Male Character, Tropes versus Women. In this episode, we examine the Miss Male Character trope and briefly discuss a related pattern called the Smurfette principle. We've defined the Miss Male Character trope as the female version of an already established or default male character. Miss Male characters are defined primarily by their relationship to their male counterparts via visual properties, narrative connection, or occasionally through promotional materials. Another one, women as background decoration. In this episode, we explore the women as background decoration trope, which is the subset of largely insignificant non-playable female characters whose sexuality or victimhood is exploited in a way to infuse edgy, gritty, or racy flavoring into game worlds. So you mean the hot chicks that we want to save or that are in the games. This is where we get the women are no longer allowed to be attractive in games stuff. These sexually objectified female bodies are designed to function as environmental texture while titillating presumed straight male players. Sometimes they're created to be glorified furniture, but they are frequently programmed as minimally interactive sex objects to be used and abused. Now, I know a lot of female gamers, and I know that a lot of them are on the same side of a lot of us men in wanting attractive female characters in games. Women as Background Decoration Part 2. This is the second episode exploring the women as background decoration trope in video games. Now this is from August 25th, 2014, okay? This isn't new, this isn't modern, this is an older thing. In this installment, we expand our discussion to examine how sexualized female bodies often occupy a dual role as both sexual playthings and perpetual victims of male violence. Another one, women as a reward. This episode explores the numerous ways in which the women as a reward trope manifests in video games. The trope occurs when women or women's bodies are employed as rewards for player actions, a pattern which frames female bodies and sexually as collectible or consumable and positions women as status symbols designed to validate the masculinity of presumed straight male players. When we discuss how this trope both reflects and reinforces the pervasive, socially constructed mentality of male entitlement that operates in the background of our culture. You guys can see where this stuff came from. This isn't something new. Women as DLC rewards, downloadable content for spending actual money. Then we address the most common defense of this kind of objectification and commodification of women's bodies, the argument that sex sells. But don't worry, she has a Bloomberg study here as a source that says sex doesn't sell. We all know that that's true. Strategic butt coverings. This episode examines the ways in which designers often employ camera angles and clothing choices as tools to deliberately sexualize and objectify female protagonists of third-person games. Stellar Blade, anyone? To illustrate that this is no accident, we contrast the ways in which women's butts are frequently emphasized with the great lengths often taken to avoid calling attention to the butts of male characters. We then present some examples of female-led third-person games that humanize rather than objectify their protagonists. Lingerie is not armor. This episode explores the ways in which female characters are frequently placed in wildly impractical sexualizing outfits specifically designed to objectify them for the titillation of the, say it with me guys, presumed straight male player. We then discuss the problems inherent in linking sexualization of female characters to notions of female empowerment and examine what positive depictions of female sexuality and sexual desire in games might look like. And one more for the road, guys. All the Slender Ladies, Body Diversity in Video Games from September 1st, 2016. This episode examines the very limited range of female body types commonly seen in games, contrasting this with the much wider range of physiques that male characters frequently possess. We then illustrate that when female characters appear who do have a body type that is notably different from the slender physique that games establish as the standard, these bodies are sometimes presented as a joke or as a twisted transgression of social standards and expectations. We examine how this limited range extends to the age of female characters as well, before highlighting a few examples of games that have positive representations of women with different body types and women who are older. You're not allowed to have hot women in games anymore because of this woman and the work that she did during Gamergate. They ended up coming up on top with what it was that they wanted presented into games. And again, she has reared her face again because she's back to put the final nail in the coffin for games. Let's go ahead and take a look at her site and see what it is that she's offering. You're not alone. Today's audiences crave authentic experiences that break free from old stereotypes and stories that better represent a wider range of characters. As the media landscape evolves, inclusive content gains critical acclaim and broader audiences. That's not what we're seeing in gaming or in movies. We're seeing that trying to escape those older tropes that everyone has loved and enjoyed for years is actually causing these industries to collapse in on themselves, because the modern audience that does not exist is not showing up. Go figure. Some of the clients that she's worked for: Devolver, Double Fine, Landfall, Tribrand, Megacrit, and Ubisoft. She goes on. With over a decade of experience as a feminist media critic and the founder of a nonprofit dedicated to inclusive representations in video games and pop culture, I've consulted on numerous projects of all sizes, from AAA titles to smaller indie games. Now here's a fun little fact to throw in for you guys. I was doing some research to try to find some of the games that Anita Sarkeesian has consulted on, and I can't seem to find a comprehensive list. It's almost like a lot of the games that she's worked on, she just doesn't want people to see maybe what it was that she helped with. My suspicion is that maybe some of those games didn't go as well as they hoped they would. Here's one, Double Fine. We worked with Anita on Psychonauts 2. That's one of the only listings that I can find. Anita pointed out multiple issues that were in blind spots we didn't even know we had. Yeah. So here's a fun little bit of this. Her consulting approach is direct, honest, and non-judgmental. The goal is to evaluate your project and provide essential education. So let's look at some of the things that she's offering here. Holistic integration of diverse identities. But we knew this based on some of the things that she's done in the past. Eliminating problematic dialogue. Well, what do you call problematic, Anita? Because a lot of us are very upset that some of the dialogue has been changed from old games to new games. She is the foremother, as it were, of doing this and this type of censorship in games. Deepening character development. Now, that could be a good thing, but based on who we're talking about, I don't really think that that's the case. Appealing to a broader audience. No, appeal to gamers. Appeal to the people who want to play games, not to the Candy Crush crowd that they're trying to lump in with gamers whenever they say that 50% of the gaming audience is women. It's not, okay? We don't count Candy Crush players and a lot of mobile game players in the gaming audience, all right? I'm sorry, mobile players, but that's just how it is. You're playing pointy tappy games on your phone, that's fine. You enjoy what you want, but we shouldn't be dumbing down the adventure games or shooter games or RPG games that we like to play in order to try to bring in more people, because you're losing your core audience. Adapt. Modernizing historically problematic content. Oh yeah, who was that she worked with again? Oh. Who else do we know that's doing that? Okay. But you can't go in and change things that historically are accurate or the stories that we know because you find it problematic because you don't have any other problems today. This is something that we're seeing in the West, generally speaking, is that people will take small little things that only have to do with them and try to cast it out onto the broader world. We don't want this. This isn't going to sell your games. Complex. Crafting complex, authentic characters. Again, this is like Deepin. What do you mean here? Solutions. Removing problematic player actions. She doesn't like the mini games that we got back in God of War or other things like that. Things that people liked in games. Something that was fun, throwaway stuff. It didn't have to be in there, no, but it was a fun little... Oh, wait, she talked about that in Women Being Rewards. Forgot about that. She wants to control the things that players are able to do. She wants to control the way that you play games by not allowing certain things in games and identifying common design pitfalls. Well, it's interesting that that's a picture with a brain there. How it works. I can begin engagement with you at any point in your development cycle. I have worked with clients long-term throughout the production while spot-checking work along the way. I've also provided reviews closer to the end of production to give developers confidence in their shipped game while helping them prepare for any post-launch concerns that could arise. Now, this is what we saw whenever we saw Kim Belair get up at, I think it was EGC, and tell people to get with the marketing and tell them what will happen if they don't put these things in games. This is where this all came from. This woman is the one that tried to murder gaming, and she succeeded. Now she's smelling blood in the water again. She's back to put the final nail in the coffin. I am Hayden Wayne 75, and this is it. This is the war that we're fighting. They're coming after everything that we want with their progressive ideas, and they're forcing it down our throats by convincing companies that it's the thing that people want. It's not what we want, and that's why we're seeing the gaming industry and Hollywood as a whole implode on itself. Comment down below, let me know what you think, and we will see you in the next one.